burnout isn't a scheduling issue. It's actually an identity crisis that we're having. So when I ask women that I work with, who are you without the role, without the title, not mom, not vice president, right? Not wife, who are you? Most of us can't answer.
Yeah, 100%.
So I created Radical Prioritization first to get really clear on who you are, because behavior is driven by your identity. It's driven by who you believe you are or who you believe you have to be. So we have to get really clear on who's driving your priorities.
On today's episode of Empowered in Health, I have Gia Lacqua here, and she is a high-performance coach who works primarily with high-achieving women. And Gia, I am so excited to hear your perspective today and everything that you do as far as coaching, mentoring, and so much more. So Gia, thanks so much for your time.
Erin, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's, I always love just hearing the work that women are doing in the world. And Gia, you and I have had the privilege of kind of connecting in a variety of different ways and talking about the things that we're passionate about and so much more. And I love everything that you have told me. And that's why I'm so excited to kind of hear more on the podcast today. So you can kind of share that knowledge and expertise with all of the listeners. So I'd love to start with kind of hearing a little bit more about the work you do. You're a high performance coach. You have your own story of kind of going from major burnout all the way into a breakthrough and into the work you do now. So walk us through that journey.
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? So I guess I'll go back to 2018, which is when I sort of hit my breaking point. I was a corporate executive. I like to say I was running on 4-inch heels, 5 hours of sleep, and 6 cups of coffee a day. Wow. Not ideal. And no wonder I hit a wall, and I was basically over-functioning. It was burnout, but burnout is a symptom. Underneath that was years of over-functioning, meaning taking on more than my fair share and not giving myself anything in return. And I think that's a very common thing for women, is that we overgive and under-receive because we don't know how to receive. But I'll save that for later. So basically, there was also a sequence of events within about a 1.5 year span. I had my older daughter at the time was 3 years old and landed in the pediatric ICU. My brother was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. My father had passed away. I was 8 months pregnant with my second daughter. I had led a global leadership team meeting in Ireland for the top 300 leaders at my company at the time, and that was on top of my day job. So all of these things compounded and resulted in my burnout, which was I started having heart palpitations. I mean, it started with the quieter symptoms that we all have, sort of the GI issues, the headache, the migraine, the insomnia, right? The just chronic fatigue. But it resulted in me having heart palpitations when I was on a cross-country flight, which freaked me out, as you can imagine. And It wasn't just a one-off palpitation. It was consistent. Got to the hotel, went to bed, next day still had them, chalked it up to stress, chalked it up to my sinus infection, kept pushing through because that's what we're supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to do. Came home and, basically I ended up on my kitchen floor thinking I was having a heart attack at one point. I was so scared to admit that this might be something actually more serious. Thankfully, it wasn't, but I didn't know that until I finally dragged myself to the doctor's office and had a battery of tests done by a cardiologist to find out, no, this was actually a result of years of chronic stress and anxiety. And there's a term I like to talk about, which is called allostatic load. And allostatic load is essentially the buildup of chronic stress in your body. And so when we do not reset to our baseline nervous system, what happens is every single event builds on top of the next, and then our baseline becomes higher. So we forget what calm and safety actually feel like in our body and in our nervous system. And so for me, when I learned this concept and I became a neuroscience nerd and a trauma-informed coach, it was eye-opening for me, because I said, wow, this really explains so much. And I know for myself, when I feel something and somebody can put a name and a concept and a definition to it, it just makes everything so much clearer. And so, I think that is an important concept for women to know. It's not one we hear, every day. And then, yeah, so that shift led me to really take a step back. It forced me to really be introspective, to start my healing journey, to redefine success for myself and what that looks like and what it means to me. And now I have the privilege of helping other women do the same.
It's so amazing, Gia. And I know your story of the different pieces and phases that you went through is inevitably so relatable to so many women because you hit the nail on the head. Like we just kind of keep going and we don't necessarily always tune into those signs and signals of us being extra stressed or being under pressure in a way that really isn't productive for our own wellness from the inside out. And it can become this snowball of a really large problem. And so I really appreciate you just transparently kind of sharing your journey and what you've gone through. And I think the thing that I would love for you to touch on a little bit more is you kind of talked about getting back into that baseline of really deep nervous system work and how that's also related to understanding some of the trauma or understanding some of the invisible pieces to
Mhm.
the things we carry. I'd love for you to talk a little more about that. Like once you realized and kind of really grew into this awareness of, I know that this is now what I need to start diving into for my own personal wellness and beyond. How did you do that? How did you take those steps? What did it look like?
Oh my gosh. So great question. The first thing I had to do is get quiet,
Yeah.
which was extremely hard for me because
Yeah.
quiet makes me or used to make me feel super uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Me
And
too.
stressed, right? Stressed
Yeah.
and anxious. Like, what am I doing? If I'm not doing something, you put the TV on in the background for
Yeah.
noise because
Yeah.
it's like quiet is deafening.
Yeah.
So, learning to get quiet, learning to be still, unlearning the belief that asking for help is a weakness, unlearning the belief that I should be able to do it all on my own, unlearning the belief that I need to push through. And, it sounds simple when I say that, but those things were not simple for me to learn at the time. So it was years of, or unlearning years of conditioning that we have all been exposed to. And those deeply ingrained beliefs that we hold on to. And so I did not do it alone. I will tell you, I finally went to therapy. I hired a women's empowerment coach who helped me realign with who I actually was. Um, and from there, I decided that the life I had built was no longer serving me. And so what I did was I got my coaching certification because this is what my passion, this is what I felt called to do. Left my corporate career after almost 20 years, which was felt impossible at the time, not only for myself, but of course the reaction of others you can imagine around me. Um, Extremely difficult, but I knew that this was the right next step for me. So getting quiet, listening to my intuition, and really following that inner knowing or that calling that I had.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, you talked about the nervous system piece, which is a big one. And we are very, as high achieving women, we are very heady. We are very logical. We are
Yeah.
very up here. So for me, it was about not just treating the mental and psychological components of healing, it was about the physiological things that were happening in my body and how made me realize how interconnected the mind body is. And for years, I sort of ignored my body. I
Yep.
was dissociated
Yep.
from my body for various reasons. And I think many of us do that, whether
Yeah.
it's ignoring your intuition or ignoring the signs and symptoms you're feeling, to push through. And so it was really getting comfortable being in my body, feeling what I was feeling and not pushing it away, not
Yeah.
suppressing the emotions. And then I'm a wellness junkie, so I will try any type of healing modality you want to throw at me. So I
Yeah.
think I've tried them all at this point. But what I learned is, they all can be helpful.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is that they can only be helpful if you are tuned in
Yeah.
to yourself.
100%. And I love that you said that because that oftentimes is the missing piece. We kind of go out and collect the tools or put the extra resources in our toolbox. But if we aren't really getting grounded in understanding our body and our brain on a deeper level, those only are going to go so far. Like they really can't touch the depth of what we truly need when we're not building that level of awareness. So I love that you talked about that, Gia, because that's a huge one for women. We just kind of get dissociated from how we actually feel, what we actually need, what we're experiencing. And it's so real, my friend. So real.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gia, I'd love for you to kind of pull in a little bit on the trauma component. I know you're a trauma informed coach, which is so powerful and important. And you talked about nervous system. You talked about building this awareness, kind of getting deeper into your body and just kind of really starting to understand what is it that you need and why and so much more. Pull in a little more about the trauma component, because that's a huge piece to wellness that we have to continue to talk about and normalize and make sure that we're addressing, because it can crop up and show up in so many ways in our
Yeah,
day-to-day life. So I'd love for you to touch on that too.
especially in high achieving women.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I will start by saying trauma is not something we walk around advertising, right? We're not holding a sign, a banner, a badge that says, I've experienced trauma.
Yeah.
It's typically something we hide, it's something we suppress, it's something we push down. So trauma comes from the Greek word meaning wound.
Okay.
That's it. And some of our wounds are obvious and others are hidden. But just because you can't see the wound doesn't mean it's not running your life. And
Yeah.
what I have found with high achieving women in particular is that the majority of us, what is driving our ambition? And this is a question that we have to ask ourselves. Are we being driven by pain? Or are we driven by purpose? Because I was driven by pain for many, many, many years. Pain and avoidance, I guess a combination of both. And it will get you far. It will work until it doesn't. It will run out, right? And so, trauma is basically any distressing event or experience that overwhelms our ability to cope. And the key is trauma is not actually about the event or the experience, it's about the imprint it leaves behind emotionally, psychologically, and as we just talked about, physically in your nervous system. It's what didn't get healed. And the other, I think, misconception is that, for many people, trauma in their head is some major life altering events. We think of trauma, we tend to think of war, abuse, natural disaster, some major loss. But there's also what's referred to as the lowercase t trauma, and that's the quieter traumas. And it can be just as impactful, even though it's not as visible. So, and it could also be what you didn't receive as a child. It could be emotional neglect. It could be abandonment issues. It could be you were parentified as a child. And we don't necessarily consider that trauma. And so therefore we can't heal it until we can name it.
Yeah.
And so many of us are walking around with unresolved trauma that's actually driving our behavior. So we're walking around with these beautifully disguised, unaddressed wounds, and we call it success.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that. And I love that you described it as the imprint of things that haven't been healed.
Yeah.
And really trying to understand that can happen in so many different ways in our lives, from big things to small things. I know as a high achieving woman, like that's something I've had to learn. Like, what are even the small little narratives that I've picked up over time? Or what are the things that I've been conditioned into that I didn't even realize? Or what are the things I started telling myself because of an outside situation or because of something that happened in my life? And I know that that's something that all women experience in some capacity. And so I love that you're just bringing that to the light and talking through the importance of starting to recognize and name and be honest about some of those components that we carry, because they're so important to start to identify in our overall journeys as women. So I super appreciate that, Gia. Love that so much.
Yeah. And when you were on my podcast, we talk about what are those limiting beliefs that we carry with your health from childhood that have been ingrained. We don't stop to question.
Yeah.
It's the same concept, right? As it applies to other aspects of your life and your identity and who you have to be or who you think you have to be or how you see yourself, what you see that you're capable of or worthy of. And all of those things are going to drive your behavior and your results.
Yeah, 100%. And I just appreciate you continuing to kind of call that to attention, because it's just good to be reminded of all of these different pieces that we have to continue to evaluate along the way, especially as high achieving women. Gia, I'd love for you to dive into a little more of your coaching framework and some of the ways that you intentionally support women. As a high performance coach and empowerment coach, I know you have a program or a methodology called Radical Prioritization. I'd love for you to share, what is that? What does that mean? And how does it actually help women with, getting in tune with their identity, understanding some of these things you're talking about, and kind of working through, different facets of how they're going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Erin. So, I created radical prioritization after I had gone through my own journey, and I would say process of reinvention, and realizing what was the work that had to be done. And one of the things I'm really good at, I know as women, we're really bad at talking about things that we're good at. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, one of the things
Yes,
I'm
please
really
do.
good at is distilling down a wealth of complex information into very simple concepts. And I was very good at that in my corporate job, and that applies as an entrepreneur as well. So that's what I did. I took essentially, I can't take my individual therapy, but I can take the concepts that I've learned along the way and translate them for women to apply in their own life. So it's not a one size fits all. It's framework to help you find your own answers. So I'll just start with radical prioritization at its core is not just about prioritizing your life. It starts with knowing who you are aside from the roles and the titles.
Yeah.
So when I ask women that I work with, who are you without the role, without the title, not mom, not vice president, right? Not wife, who are you? Most of us can't answer.
Yeah, 100%.
Because when we lose, again, we lose connection with who we actually are. We lose our sense of self. And that's why I say burnout isn't a scheduling issue. It's actually an identity crisis that we're having. So I created radical prioritization first to get really clear on who you are, because behavior is driven by your identity. It's driven by who you believe you are or who you believe you have to be. So we have to get really clear on who's driving your priorities.
Yeah, I love that. So
Yeah.
good. So
Yeah.
good. And the identity piece, even as you said that right now, I'm sitting here thinking, like, could I answer that? Like, could I really sit here and answer that?
Yeah.
Because so
Hard.
quickly we're like, well, I'm a mom of four, or I'm an entrepreneur, or
Hard.
I'm the VP of this business, or, I represent this brand as an affiliate, or whatever it is. But to actually strip it down to the core and say, but this is just who I am as me. Like, I have to pause for a minute and think about, how
Absolutely.
would I really answer that?
And it's
So
not to
powerful.
diminish the roles, Erin. Like, the roles are important. They are a part of your identity. I'm not going to dismiss that. But knowing who you are at your core is critical, because, like I said, that is what's going to drive your behavior and your decisions. And so without that, we are essentially living in reactivity mode.
100%. I'm curious, if you have someone that you're speaking to, a client or just a woman that you're having a conversation with, and they get into that headspace of feeling like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to actually put words behind my identity. How do you help them kind of start to pull that out? Like, is there a process you go through? Are there certain questions you ask? Like, I'm just curious how you would help a person like that kind of dig in a little deeper.
Oh my God, such a great question. So there's a lot of ways you can approach it, but I guess one simple way to think about it is, who were you?
Yeah.
Who were you before the world told you who to be?
Yeah.
I was a creative as a kid. I lost my creativity, not artsy creative, but more expressive creative. I danced for many years. And I lost that sense of creativity, and I didn't rediscover it until I became an entrepreneur and wrote 3 children's books 5 years
Yeah.
ago. And it's crazy. So, who were you? What did you love? What lit you up before the weight of the world fell on your shoulders, before the roles, before the titles?
Yeah.
Did you love to play games? Are you a problem solver? What were you known for? And usually the things that we hide and suppress are our superpowers. They are the
Yeah.
core of who we are. Another example I'll give you is for many years as a leader, dating back in the day, I tried to be more like a man and emulate what a male leader looked like in order to be quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
There was no place for pink nails and a nurturing personality.
Yeah.
There wasn't. Now there is. There wasn't when I started climbing that corporate ladder and becoming a leader. And so what did I do? If it doesn't fit in, what do? We suppress it. If it
Yep.
doesn't conform to the mold, the model, if it's not professional, we suppress it. So one of the things when I became a coach, someone I had known for a long time, she said to me, "You're such a nurturer." And I felt so exposed. I felt like somebody pulled my clothes off. I was like, she sees me.
Yeah.
But it was that moment that made me realize, damn, that's my superpower. And
Yeah.
I've been holding it. That's what people crave, that connection, that nurturing, like even as a corporate leader. So it starts with who were you before the masks and what lights you up? And then starting with your core values, like what are the most important things in life that you must experience? If you're a mom, what are the most important values that you are teaching your kids? Is it family? Is it love? Is it faith? Is it service? Because that is the root of everything.
It's so good, Gia. And you have my wheels turning over here as I'm hearing you speak, and I'm hearing you say specifically like what we feel like for some reason doesn't fit in or doesn't conform or is out of the box in a certain scenario or situation. We just start to suppress that part of ourselves, and that's
Totally.
so profound for women. Like, I talk to women all the time who are going through the same thing. I've also gone through the same thing. Like, I have felt that in different seasons of my life. There are still things right now today that I'm literally identifying right now in my brain. Like, gosh, I know that I'm still suppressing in some ways because I get anxious or nervous or feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be rejected in some way or not accepted in some way, or really having to figure out what is that about and why does that feel hard about my identity. I'm curious, in what I'm talking about here, do you feel like you have come across women kind of going through that kind of mental battle and figuring out, like, if I am suppressing things, now what do I do? Like, what's my next step to get through that?
Yeah. So it's a great point, Erin. I think what happens is when we are younger, people react to who we are.
Yeah.
And then that shapes our sense of self. So I know a lot of women who've been told, you're too much,
Yep.
you're too emotional, right? You're too bossy. And so what do? Is we tone it down. We
Yeah.
suppress it to fit in because belonging is a very core, basic human need. It's biologically ingrained in us. So it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so acknowledging that and recognizing it is important, but then saying, well, who do I actually want to be?
Yeah.
Because if you're not 100% satisfied with where you are and who you are, the question isn't, what do I need to do differently? It's, who do I need to be?
Yeah.
It's not about hacking behaviors. It's about changing the root of how you see yourself.
So
And
good.
so, yeah, so it's really about getting clear on, what are the things that, maybe you were too emotional, but maybe being emotional and empathetic is your superpower. Maybe you are bossy, but maybe that makes you an incredible leader, right? So the other thing to keep in mind is sometimes our superpowers can end up hurting us when they are overused or extended.
Yeah.
And that's true for everybody. So it is about, making sure that you are walking that line of, using it, but obviously being conscious of how that impacts others.
100%. And the reframe that you're talking through of seeing it as some sort of gift or superpower
Mhm.
versus the thing that makes me too much to be around or too emotional for some reason, so I need to suppress it. And so I love that you're speaking to that mindset component, because again, just really powerful to really think through those things that we've told ourselves potentially for so long. And I know this is such a real battle for women, especially high achieving women who
Yeah.
are, after goals, after success, want to make an impact in some way. This is something that we have to continue to normalize and continue to talk through. So Gia, I love all of your perspective, my friend. It's so incredibly powerful. So good. I
Thank you.
know one of the things you talked about in your story, and you kind of talked about it a little bit when you were speaking through radical prioritization, was this idea of kind of redefining success, and how you maybe outgrew your version of success that you thought was quote unquote successful in the beginning of your corporate career, et cetera, and how you started to kind of shift into this different version of success and redefine that. I'd love for you to speak a little about what that means to you. Like, what does that look like? And how would you essentially share that with other women who also want to get into this place of maybe redefining what success means to them?
I love this. So redefining success, here's the thing. We were handed a definition of success. Nobody handed you a piece of paper and said, what does success look like to you as a little girl or as an 18-year-old, right? So we were handed a definition of success. So most of us are chasing that definition and checking the boxes and doing all the things. And then we get there, we quote unquote arrive. We have the job, we have the house, we have the zip code, we have the kids, we have the marriage. And then you're like, well, this doesn't feel satisfying. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. But you don't want to say that out loud.
Right.
So the reality is, you were never taught to measure success by how fulfilled you feel.
So good.
Right? Think about it. Nobody ever said, hey, Erin, success is how you feel on the inside.
Yeah,
Nobody
no one
said that.
Nobody says that.
And it's nobody's fault necessarily. It's not about placing blame, but it's about recognizing that whose definition of success are you following? For a lot of women I talk to, it's not just society and culture. It's, the parents, the environment. My parents told me I had to be a lawyer. My parents told me I had to be a doctor. Does that mean they're going to feel fulfilled later on in life? No. Yeah. So, it's figuring out whose definition of success are you following, and what does it actually mean to you now? And what does it mean to you? What does it look like in the future? And not just what does it look like, but what does it feel like in your body? Like, what do you actually want out of life? Do you wake up feeling energized and happy, or are you dreading going through the motions of another day? When you go to bed, are you like, wow, I had impact. I did even the smallest of things just to recognize, what you accomplished that day? Or are you like worried about your to-do list and getting anxious for the next day? So it's really about, redefining what success means to you.
It's just incredible. And the thing that we have to be willing to question. And I know even in my own journey, I've had to get to that place of giving myself permission to question, because you hit the nail on the head. Like, it really has to be about how you feel, not the accolades, not the titles, not the next big paycheck. Yeah. It has to be, but how do you really truly feel in the day-to-day work that you're doing, not only as a professional and a high achieving woman, but also personally, in your family, in your relationships with all the people, and so much more. Like, it's so important. And I know one of the things that you're also a part of, Gia, is this national research study called the Quiet Crisis, which, quite honestly, I would love to learn more about, because I know that kind of talks about some of the hidden costs of success. What is happening there? And what are some of the most surprising things that you've maybe learned through going through that research?
Yeah. So last year in 2024, I conducted a national research study with 750 working women across America, ages 18 to 65, and really to measure the hidden costs of success for high achieving women, because we so often recognize the pain points. Now, I think women are more acutely aware of the pain points, but nobody's really quantifying it. Nobody's talking about it in a meaningful way. And so that was my goal, was to how do we actually quantify and measure the problem so that we can really provide meaningful solutions.
Yeah.
So there's two stats that jump out that I think are, again, I don't know that I would say they're surprising, but helpful to measure. The first was that 75% of women feel compelled to quote unquote grin and bear it.
Wow.
Meaning suppressing our struggles and pushing through the exhaustion. And we know where that gets us.
Yep. 100%.
The other thing is 69% reported feeling that no matter how much they accomplished, it never feels like it's enough.
Yeah.
And this is what I call the never enough phenomenon. It's
Yeah.
basically this concept of that inner treadmill where you are constantly running, constantly going, and never arriving.
Yeah.
You never feel like you're there. And at the end of the day, you're trying to prove, at the end of the day, what's driving that is the belief that you have to prove your worth.
Yes. 100%.
And so it's helpful to know that one, you're not alone.
Oh yeah.
You are not alone. You are in very good company.
Yeah.
And two, to know that there's a way out.
Yeah.
There are multiple ways out, but it's important to recognize that there are steps that you can take to shift out of it. And it starts with those internal belief systems.
That's so good and just relatable. Like you said, not alone, totally in good company. And I can relate to that personally. Just
Yeah.
the never enough phenomenon is a big one. Because we manage so much as women, both personally and professionally. And so that's a big piece to the overall puzzle of kind of evaluating, our life, our lifestyle, how we redefine success, and so much more. Gia, as before we move into wrap up, I'd love to kind of speak to the woman that's listening to this who is really resonating with a lot of what you share. And maybe just like on this last point that you talked about in these stats in the study that you've been a part of, she feels like
Mhm.
no matter what she does, she's never enough. And she knows she's kind of on this road to burnout and she's been suppressing pieces of her identity and she doesn't know how to essentially get out of it. What would be the first best step you would give her to encourage her?
Yeah, it's a great question, Erin. So I would first try to identify the inner tension, the inner friction that you're feeling that you've been suppressing. So where are you feeling that discomfort?
Yeah.
When is it coming up for you? And getting really, really curious with it. Don't judge it. Don't judge yourself. Just get curious with the discomfort because I found through my own experience that the quote unquote ugly or uncomfortable emotions that come up, what do? We shun them, right? We
Mhm.
push them away. We ignore them and they don't go away.
Yeah. No.
What do we know? We know that it just grows and gets louder. So I created a method also called say the hard thing because so many women are trained to perform peace, even when it costs them their truth. And this applies across so many facets of life. But what we know now, research shows that chronic emotional suppression can increase stress. This is right in your wheelhouse,
Oh yeah.
weakens our immunity,
Yep.
right? Leads to autoimmune and raises our risk of premature death by 30%. And the cancer risk rises by 70%.
Wow. That's
Incredible,
wild.
right?
Incredible.
Right. So, what do we do about it? I created the same method to help you reclaim your voice. And listen, telling your truth, it's freaking hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. But guess what? Staying stuck
Yeah.
is harder, and suppressing your truth has very severe consequences. So, the SAY acronym is number one is spot the silence. Where is that tension coming up for you? And say what you're not saying, right?
Yeah.
Find the thing that is causing you that friction that you're not speaking. A is anchor to your truth. What is the truth that you want to speak? And the last one is why you say it anyway. I don't
Yeah.
care if you say it to yourself. I don't
Right.
care if you write it down in a journal. If your voice shakes, say it. Say it out loud and start small. I realize that that might be super hard for high performing women because that one sentence can actually shift your whole life because
Yeah.
as I said before, you can't change what you can't name. Start small. Start with this junk drawer is giving me anxiety.
Yeah.
Start with I need help.
Yeah.
Start with why is it that nobody else knows how to change the toilet paper roll in my house?
Yeah.
Start small.
Gia, so good. And I love that. Like, just whatever it is, start small and start to name it and say it so you can essentially start to release it. Like, that's the process. And I think so often, especially when it comes to the mental and emotional sides of wellness and everything that you spoke about today, like, we sometimes build it up in our brains to be a lot larger than they need to be because they've just been buried or suppressed for so long. So when you take those small steps, like you're saying, like you can really give it less power by just
Yeah.
kind of releasing it,
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
recognizing like, okay, what are we going to do about it now? And you
Yeah.
don't have to have the answer when you
Yeah.
say it. That's the thing. You don't have to have the answer, but just
Yeah.
saying it, putting it out there, the release is one part of it. And then the shift will follow, because then what happens is once you get comfortable starting to speak the small truths, then you find, or I find, that women are comfortable saying, I'm no longer happy in this role.
Yeah.
I'm no longer happy in this relationship.
Yeah.
I'm depressed. I have an eating disorder,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's where the real shift happens.
It's so good, Gia. Gia, thank you so much for your absolutely profound just education and knowledge today. I am blown away, and I have no doubt this is going to serve so many women in so many different capacities. Can you quickly share how people can find you online, connect with you, learn about the work you do, and so much more?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Erin, I want to thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here with you, and really hope that this message landed where it needs to.
Of course.
You can find me at my website, gialacqua.com, GIALACQUA.com. I'm at Instagram at Gia Lacqua, and I'm on LinkedIn as well, pretty active there. I am also having a live event in September in the New Jersey area. It's called the Strategy Reset, for women who know they've outgrown their strategy and are ready to create what's next. And then my podcast, What the Shift, is available on all major podcast platforms.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that everything is linked in the show notes so you guys can go ahead and connect with Gia at any point in time. Gia, again, thank you for your incredible perspective today, my friend. So grateful.
Thank you, Erin. So thankful for you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.